There are sort of three main strategies in photography for depicting motion. We've been talking a little bit about shutter speed and how we can get motion blur in our pictures, but even in a picture that has motion blur, right, the picture itself is still static, right? We're not in Hogwarts, right? So I don't have, I mean, fucking J.K. Rowling turfy. Anyway, we're not in Hogwarts, right? So the pictures do not actually move, right? Dumbledore isn't like, hey, and like, I'm going to go to my other picture now. They are static, right? If I look at my picture, go do something else, come back to my picture, it's still in the same place. Nothing has changed. So how do we understand motion? How do we show motion in a static medium? It's one of the sort of big challenges of photography, and something that I think at this point, we kind of forget about, right? We're kind of just used to, seeing something and being like, oh, motion, to the point where I think we don't stop and think about how strange it is that we are seeing motion in this very explicitly static medium of photography. So, first off, this is Edward Muybridge. You may be thinking to yourself, that's not how you spell Edward. And you're right. He was like, I'm going to just make up my name spelling. Looks cooler. Why not? I mean, yeah, sure. Go for it. I'm now Brad with three A's and an umlaut. So Edward Muybridge is showing us one of the main strategies, one of the three main strategies for depicting motion in photography. I'm going to hide off the screen a little bit. So that is a series of images with a slight change between them, right? So here we have what we understand immediately as a galloping horse, right? And he's taking it. I've just scared the cat. Sorry, cat. He has basically had a series of images shot as this horse gallops across the thing. He's put them all together in this little book, and when we look at it, we sort of immediately get like, oh yeah, look, there's the horse, right? It's going. We kind of interpret or interpolate between those frames the action that happened to connect them. And so we get motion from this series of frozen pictures. Here we have again, right, sort of like movement. There's a big thing with these guys where they're like, hey, we're going to take some nudie photos, but we're going to call it scientific photography study, and people will buy it. And you're like, wow, nothing changes. So that strategy, right? I mean, that underlies so many things, right? It underlies things like comic books, right? You look at a comic book, it's a series of panels, and we sort of understand from one panel to the next that something has changed, but we see them as being the same place, the same characters, and so we interpret this idea of motion, right? If you were to go and take a like old-timey motion picture, right? Like this like long piece of film, it would be the same thing. It's like one frame, slight move, one frame, slight move, one frame, slight move. In that case, they then play them back at this very high speed, and you sort of get the illusion that they are moving. But even if you were just shown that film strip, you would understand that position A, position B, position C is representing that kind of motion. So artists have used this, sort of taken advantage of the strategy to do things that are slightly more fun. This is Robin Rhode. Robin Rhode is an artist, photographer, and this is a grid of 9 photographs where Robin is obviously waving a flag back and forth. Except that when we zoom in, right, this flag is actually a bunch of bricks. You can see a bunch of bricks. The flagpole that is like bending with the force of waving the flag is this like metal thing that's kind of bent and taped together. And Robin is actually lying down on this concrete, I don't know what it is, if it's like a parking lot, I don't know. Right, so there you can see one of the things that I think is so genius in this series here, where they're waving the flag coming back the other way, you get almost this like blur effect from this oxide that's coming off those red bricks, right? So the bricks are rubbing off a little bit as they get moved back and forth, and so you get this sense of like the blur from their movement. So again, using this idea of one image after another and taking advantage of it to make something that is definitely not in motion look like it's in motion, right? So Muybridge is taking something that is in motion, right? That horse was actually galloping, or I don't know, running, cantering, trotting. I don't know what the fuck horses do. That horse was in motion, right? But the camera couldn't show it, and so we put these things together to sort of bring back that illusion of motion. With Robin Rhode, there never was any motion, but he's using those same strategies, right, to fool us as a viewer into thinking there is some motion in these static, still objects. Yeah, it's really good. Like, love it. Here we have some more. This is dunking a basketball, right? It's like drawn with chalk. Here we have actually earlier, this is Man Ray, making these sort of like paper cutouts of someone jumping. So Etienne Marie. So the first strategy is a series of images, each depicting one position, right? But it's one discrete image, one discrete image, one discrete image, right? Horse, horse picture, horse picture, horse picture. Each picture has one horse in it in one position. The next one has the same horse in a slightly different position. Etienne Marie is doing a different strategy, roughly contemporary of Muybridge. These are one picture, right? So one frame with the same object in several positions. So he's doing this in a way that is not available to most of us with our cameras. Some of you can do it. Don't worry about not being able to do it. Where he's doing just multiple exposure, right? So he's working with this bigger plate camera, whatever, and the bird starts and he's like, pa-choom, 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 but doesn't sort of advance the film. So we have multiple images of this heron, I don't know, let's say it's a heron, egret, I don't know what it is, some bird in flight on the same piece of film, and we sort of interpret that as motion, right? Same thing, sort of motion studies of a person, sort of pole vaulting, sad ass pole vault. And then we get into these, what I love, these are these amazing motion studies. Initially, when I saw this, I thought this was like a nun, and I didn't know what was going on. It's not. It's a sawhorse with a white thing draped over it. Behind there's a big black curtain, and then there's a person wearing all black where you can see their foot here. And it's sort of like, right, foot, plant, leap, foot, 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 foot. So there's a dot on the top of their head, dot on their shoulder, line coming down the arm, dot at the elbow, arm, right, for the foot, ankle, leg, knee, back to the pelvis. So they're taking all of these pictures, right? And because the person's wearing all black and there's just these little white bits, those bits show up more. And so they run and they jump, right? And you have whatever, 150 exposures as they leap over the sawhorse. And it records each of these discrete moments of where their position was, but they're all strung together on this single frame. And so you can really get this sense of the whoosh, that movement. You can compare the relative position from one moment to the next in a way that you couldn't if it was one picture and the next to it a second picture and the next to it a third picture. Here Here's some more examples. Again, weird things to take a picture of, but and then right, this like here they are walking, right, and the sort of the motion, the rhythm, the sort of like boogie woogie of it, right? Like it just man, it's really for me like absolutely incredible photograph. Here again, you can start to see a little bit, right? The feet, it's a little skeletal. Right here we can see again, there's a face, there's this like X on top of the head, feet down at the bottom. Right, you can see how our locomotion is not all that even, right? It comes in these sort of waves. As we walk, we go up and down, right? We also go a little bit side to side. It's why if you have a ponytail, it goes back and forth. I do not have a ponytail. So if we can't do that in camera, what are other ways that we can use that strategy? So this is from Eleanor Anton from a series called like 100 Boots or 1,000 Boots. I think it's 100 Boots. But this is a photograph taken ostensibly out the window of a moving van. The van is parked, I'm sure. But you can see these boots, right, coming up and sort of swarming over the top of this car. And it's the same strategy, right? The idea of having multiple positions in a single frame implying motion. So in the same way that, this bird, bunch of places, we sort of tie those together and make it seem like the bird is moving, even though those are static images of the bird. Here we have these boots, and our mind sort of says, oh yeah, right, they're coming from over there, they're going up and over the car. So even if I don't have the ability to do some sort of multiple exposure with ghostly boots walking over a car, I can set it up by having identical boots in multiple positions in the frame. So that's the second strategy, right? First strategy was multiple pictures, right? Each with a small change incrementally between them. Second strategy is one picture with the same thing in multiple positions. Now to do that, you may need to have several of the same thing, right? So I can have a boot and a boot and a boot and a boot and a boot. It's like I'm Canadian. But yeah, that's the second strategy. Now the third strategy is sort of not as much a historical one. This is it's actually a video still from Marcus Lyle. The video Slow Service. If you look it up, it's a little crazy. They just like had this really, really high speed camera and then like videotape people as they like unexpectedly threw things at them. I mean, it seems a little mean. So this picture, right? I mean, the whole point of this picture is that it's like frozen everything in time. So why am I saying it depicts motion in some way? I'm saying it depicts motion because as we look at it, we intuitively understand that this state is about to collapse, right? We look at it and we're like, okay, well, that's in the middle of, we know that there's no way that this can just like stay like that forever. So we understand based on our like knowledge of physics, experience in the world, that this is not a static scene, and we sort of project forward the next thing that's going to happen, all this stuff collapsing, right? So again, we're taking something static and we're creating motion for it within our own minds. And here's somebody, artistic person, doing something similar. Anna and Bernhard Bloom, they have these, it's a very weird series. Anyway, this picture that I've taken from the series is someone seeming to throw potatoes up in the air. There are these potatoes. And then here, right, and so far you're like, okay, Brad, this is the first example, right, where things are in different positions. Okay, just concentrate on this one. Excuse me, this picture, right, these potatoes are in motion because we know potatoes don't just hang out in the air, right? We're not just like walking down the street and we're like, oh, the air potato is great, right? The potatoes, if you put a potato in the air and you move your hand, the potato falls down. So that is an example of the third strategy, which is showing you something that you know is an untenable state, showing something where you know it has to change, it has to move, it has to fall. So that is the third strategy of showing motion. So first strategy is series of images with incremental changes between them, right? Think about the galloping horse. Second strategy is one image, right, with the same thing in different positions throughout it, right? Remember the bird or the boots. And third strategy is something which we know it can't maintain that state and position. So either the splat is about to collapse, or the potatoes are about to fall. In the actual picture, excuse me, of the potatoes, they're actually hung by strings, right? So they're actually when the picture was taken, they are not falling down. But when we see them, we immediately assume they're falling down because we know that that's not what a potato in midair would do hanging there. We know that that potato would drop. So those are the three strategies. You'll need to have that information and think about it for assignment 5. So yeah, enjoy. Go look at the PDFs if you want a refresher on any of that, and go get moving.